Before I go into the presentation, which yesterday I did learn I need to unplug one of my screens because Zoom does not like for there to be more than one. So I think I've got this today. What I would like to do before we move into the presentation about congregational process is I just want to invite you to pause, to take a deep breath in, to reflect on your faith community, how you give to your faith community in support, but also how you feel supported by your faith community. And I'm going to lead us in a prayer to prepare us for this presentation. May we pray together. Oh God, I give you thanks for High Country UCC, for the way they are community for each other and the way they are in their community. Dear God, I ask that you bless them during this time of transition and that you help us know best how to work together. And dear God, at this time, I invite us to be in touch with the curiosity that I believe comes from Spirit, and to share in curiosity and wisdom as we determine the best next steps for this church. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, Sarah, I am going to close my chat so that if we have questions that show up in the chat, if you can help me manage that. And I think I'll just go through the presentation and then we'll do questions at the end. This shouldn't be too long. Okay, let me. Okay, can you see that screen? Good, great. So it's an informational overview of the work that we are going to do together, the work that we have already begun, and that we will continue as we journey together. Do you want to share just briefly with you about the Center for Congregational Health? We are a ministry of the Division of Faith Health with Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist. There are not many hospital systems. As a matter of fact, there are no hospital systems in the country who have a church consulting and leadership development group internal to the hospital. So we are unique. We were established in 1992, and we have worked in at least 44 states and 4 foreign countries, and we have served at least 29 different faith groups. Healthychurch.org is our website, and you are welcome to go and read more about us there. Most of our work shows up in the form of working with congregations and staff as consultants. We work with transition, visioning, conflict, staff team development. It is not uncommon for us to do governing board development process with congregations as well. And we also do training. We train people to be intentional interim ministers, church consultants. We train coaches, and we do a lot of leadership development training for clergy. Our coaching, we also have coaching services, mostly for clergy and church leaders. It is not uncommon for other people to call on us. We have coached people in the hospital system as well, because the system learned that we do coaching, and so sometimes they utilize our services too. So what we're going to talk about is a spiritual discernment process. This is an opportunity for you to clarify your congregation's identity. We will discern God's will, purpose, and direction for the congregation, and engage the congregation's intentionality and sense of community, and determine paths to your future. All of that to say, we are working on clarifying identity. This is highly congregational. We cannot do this with a leadership team or a transition team. This work can only be done throughout the whole congregation, and it will help us to determine next steps to finding your next pastor. So at the Center for Congregational Health, we have a process that we work with commonly called intentional interim ministry. That model is used in various denominations, and other organizations also work with that model. And it can be a very lengthy process with a congregation. Also, at the Center for Congregational Health, we have been using a model called Thriving Congregations, which is not designed for transition, but it very much parallels the work of the intentional interim ministry model. And the reason I say that is because what we will be doing at High Country really is a blend of those two things. And I'll say more about that. I think I may unpack it before we get to the confusion that I have just created with trying to explain that. So I want to tell you a little bit about Thriving Congregations first. This is a grant from the Lilly Endowment Foundation. So if you are on any Eli Lilly medication, then you need to know that the money that Eli Lilly makes from their business endeavors, they contribute tremendously to faith-based work, but also to youth and education that contribute probably more in the state of Indiana. But the Lilly Endowment Foundation has worked tremendously with clergy and congregations throughout our country. And the Center for Congregational Health has received 2 of those awards to work with helping ministers or clergy, pastors thrive, but also to help congregations thrive. And this is the work that we do. We did even before we had a grant. It's the work that we continue to do. It very much is a work that we feel called to. So you will notice that typically this kind of process is about 4 to 6 months. And if I were writing you a proposal to do this work with your congregation without a grant, that price tag would be somewhere in the ballpark of $10,000, and intentional interim ministry would be significantly more than that. And but we are going to use our grant to underwrite your funds, and that allows you to do this process for $500 rather than $10,000. So what the Thriving Congregations model looks like, it really is a strategic planning model to help congregations look to their future. It helps a congregation to explore their past and articulate, name, uncover the values of the congregation, to really embrace those. It helps a congregation to look at their current assets. And by assets, I don't mean money and property. I mean people and gifts, giftedness within the congregation. And also to explore the larger community around you. What are the needs in the community? And what we do believe that this combination of work and dreaming into your future allows you to be strategic about the plans that you make and to put some action steps toward your mission and vision. This is a congregational process. Every church that does this selects a leadership team to lead the process, to work with the consultant and lead the process, and to answer questions about the future of their congregation. So that's Thriving Congregations. That's our Thriving Congregations model. And so now I want to talk with you a little bit about transition and interim ministry. Remember, I said these 2 models kind of parallel each other. So transition or interim ministry, High Country has chosen to find a bridge pastor, to call a bridge pastor for preaching and pastoral care and administration duties as needed, which they will determine, that committee will determine with the person they choose, and to do work with a consultant to facilitate the interim process designed to meet the needs of your congregation. That is me. Again, so Thriving Congregations model is congregational process. Intentional interim ministry also is a congregational process. And I will just pause and say, any work that the Center for Congregational Health does with a congregation is a congregational process. We do not take a group out of a congregation and expect that group to carry the responsibility for the church. We really believe that the best work that a congregation can do must be done by the congregation. So the work of the intentional interim ministry process is to clarify the congregation's identity, clarify the characteristics that you are seeking in a new pastor, begin planning for receiving a new pastor, prepare all the written documents for the search process, and prepare a solid foundation for the pastoral search committee to do their work. So you can see the Thriving Congregations model did not talk about transition and preparation for a pastor, which is why we're also looking at this model. So there are, in a time of transition, there are 3 phases, 8 stages, and 5 focus areas of intentional interim ministry. Those phases are ending, in between time, and new beginnings, not very scientific, just describing. What we often call this in-between time feels a little bit like a wilderness journey. And I would say wilderness journey feels a little bit like transition. That's what this time is. So you've already had your ending. You're not at your new beginning yet. We are in the in-between time. The 8 stages are closure. You've had closure with your former pastor. There may need to be some more closure that will happen along the way, and that's fine. That is a part of transition. I would say you are very clearly in this stage of direction finding. You are, excuse me, you are seeking who will serve your congregation, who will lead your congregation, and you also are seeking, what is our next step? What is it that we need to do? This clarify identity is key. I would say is key for every congregation. Every congregation should be clear about its identity, but especially between pastors. So pastors are congregations are shaped by their pastors and vice versa. When a pastor leaves, a congregation really has to ask the question, who are we without, in your situation, who are we without Tamara? Because if you don't know who you are without your former pastor, it's going to be very challenging to call your next pastor and have them know who you are. So there's a lot of reasons why we talk about clarifying identity, but it really is the work of transition to that we should engage. So often churches will go straight from one pastor to a search process to find the next pastor. Sometimes that works. Most of the time it does not work well. Clarifying identity it really is essential for the future direction of your church. So this is what clarifying identity looks like in the intentional interim process. There are 5 areas of focus: heritage or history, mission, leadership, connections, and future. The Thriving Congregations model had 3 bubbles that connected, and those really are about history, dreaming into the future, and determining assets. But the thing that I find really interesting is that even though we show up 3 bubbles there, that those 3 bubbles hit nicely with these 5 areas of focus as well. So the High Country UCC process looks like these 2 kind of side by side. And if I do this right, you can see them overlapped. So it's not a neat and tidy fit, but it is congregational process. Notice I said it's not neat and tidy, and it is congregational process. Oftentimes congregational process feels a little bit chaotic because we really do want to hear from everybody. So talk just a minute about doing the work. I will work with your congregation as a transition facilitator or consultant. I have been trained as an intentional interim minister and as a church consultant. This is the work that I do. I started to say 40 hours a week, but if my family were here, they would laugh at that because they know I don't work just 40 hours a week, just like many of you. But this is my profession. This is the work that I do. We will focus on clarifying your identity, and we will do that through congregational gatherings and small group work together. Your congregation must be committed to this work. If the congregation doesn't show up to do this work together, then it will be left for the transition team to have to determine pieces and next steps. And they really need the support of the congregation to show up in order to do this work well. Some of this is not completely accurate on this slide. I should have edited this. But a transition consultant, if doing just the intentional interim process, this would be accurate. Like I said, we are doing a blend. And what that means is that I think some of the work may move a little more quickly, but we're not leaving anything out. I don't want you to feel like you're getting a shortened version of anything. I think that we can do this work without having to do 6 congregational gatherings. However, if the transition team and I and our work together feel like we need 6 congregational gatherings, then we will do that. So this work really is I used the phrase earlier, is a spiritual discernment process. We will determine next steps as we move through the process. So the desired outcomes or the goals of this process, how many times can I say this? I'm going to say it again. It's about clarifying the congregation's unique identity. It's identifying the congregation's core values, identifying the areas of mission and ministry about which the congregation feels most passionate and feels called to pursue. It's about projecting the type of staff and or facilities that you will need to fulfill your sense of call. And it is determining, in conjunction with the search team, information for the church profile. And actually, the transition team will help to compile the church profile and then share that with the search team. The congregation will be a part of that. So it's not that this is going to be drafted in some back room somewhere and just moved along. The congregation will know what's in the church profile. So your leadership team or transition team, you have a transition team, and your transition team will function as the eyes and ears of the congregation during this planning process. They will set dates and guide the timeline that we follow. They will help with the necessary preparation for congregational gatherings, and they may call on you to help with that or on committees that are already formed. They will facilitate small groups. We will collect and interpret data. We will communicate that data to the congregation. We will reevaluate process as we move forward. We will present goals and action plans to the congregation. Again, nothing will be done without the congregation's knowledge. So I want you to hear that clearly, that the transition team will do the prep work and the facilitation work, but the congregation will be aware of every step along the way. And we will work to motivate the congregation to embrace this process and to engage this process. It's, again, very important that you participate when there's a congregational gathering where we're going to do some community building and exercise in order that will help us to write the profile, and the transition team will draft the congregational profile. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this. So what's required of your congregation, as I shared, we are looking at your congregation as engaging the Thriving Congregations model and doing the transition work alongside of that. And so because of that, we're able to bring you into our grant program, and therefore you only have to pay $500. You have already designated a transition team, and we began our training yesterday. I will continue to work with the transition team and the congregation. The transition team will lead you through the whole process until the search team is ready to begin the search process. And one of the things that happen, when you have a congregational meeting, it is much easier if you feed people. Now, we may not feed people every gathering, but it is definitely easier if you're staying at church after worship and then you're going to be there for a couple more hours, it'd be nice to have lunch. So some of the things that the transition team will do is facilitate. They may not prepare the food, but they will make sure that there is some responsible entity within the church that can follow through on that. I am guessing that at High Country, this is not an issue, that you know how to gather and be community together. And again, the whole church family participates in all of the process. So, questions. Let me stop my share. And I'm going to make you bigger on my screen so that I can see you. And I want you to tell me what your questions are. You can unmute and ask your questions, or you can drop them in the chat.
Can you remind us again who's on the transition team?
I will probably leave somebody off, so I am going to turn to Melanie and Pam, I believe, who can, or is it Kath and Pam?
Melanie.
Melanie and Pam. I was right the first time. Who can tell us who are the people on that?
Pam, Melanie, Kath, Joan Brannon, Barry, Marshall, Jennifer Moore, and Jackie Henry. Is that everybody?
I think so. Good. Thank you. If we were standing in the building, we would have had them stand up. Other questions? So this means we're going to schedule the first congregational meeting and everybody's going to be there ready to work, right? Yes. Awesome.
Beth, can you help us? You said something very smart before about, small group leading into large group and kind of why we have this smaller transition team and then we'll do these congregational meetings. Can you help us understand kind of what the gifts are in creating those two groups and helping us organize like that?
Yeah. So it is, if you have ever worked on a committee to accomplish tasks, you know that it is easier to to come up with a plan to accomplish those tasks if the group is smaller. It does not mean that the group does the work by themselves. They are planning and trying to implement or facilitate so that the whole congregation can participate. I also Sarah used the phrase small group and large group. I strongly believe in having small groups so that everybody can contribute. I mean, just like we did breakout rooms today, we will have small group gatherings at times. Sometimes we will have a large group gathering and small groups that meet in that and then come back and share in the large group. And that is because it is impossible to hear everybody if we stay in the large group. So we will do some small group process and so that everybody can feel comfortable and contribute. And then we will do large group processes to hear back from small groups, but also to hear reports from your transition team. So yesterday I met with the transition team and church council and kind of gave them an overview of the work that we will be doing. And so someone has asked if I would share some of what I shared with them yesterday. You have had two pastors who had long tenures. I think the average stay for a pastor now is less than 5 years. I want to say it's maybe around 3 even. So I want you to stop and think about that. Your last pastor was here 10 years, and I think your first pastor was here for about that long. Am I right? Yeah. So you've had 2 pastors who have stayed double at least the average for pastors. And it one of the reasons why you don't want to move quickly through a transition time is you want to be certain that the person you call next is a good fit for you. The other thing that we are kind of wrestling with these days is it's post the onset of the pandemic. I won't say post pandemic, but post the beginning of the pandemic. There is not a new normal yet in determining how things flow. However, what I do know is that your church is functioning and appears to be functioning well, and that means that you want to continue to have healthy practices. And in doing healthy work together, you will be able to continue to move into your future in a healthy way. I have another question in the chat. From your experience, how long does this process typically take? That really is up to you. What I can say is you cannot do the work of looking at your history, discerning your articulating your values, looking at assets, and dreaming into your future really in less than 4 months, probably. And it will take that work to create the profile. The search process is different. I shared with the transition team yesterday, 25 years ago, I worked on Southern Conference staff. And at that time, we would say to churches that were engaging a pastoral search, it will take anywhere from 18 to 36 months for you to find your next pastor. There's no rhyme or reason right now for us to know how long it takes. I think most churches, it takes around 18 months. Most churches, it does not take 36 months. So go ahead and relieve yourself of the panic that stoked in you. I just think that's important to know, that it's not going to take you. I don't think it will take you 36 months to find your next pastor. It may take a long time, and in that time, I hope that you will be faithful to your community, that you will be faithful to process, that you will continue to contribute your opinion and your questions, because that really is what will help you in the long run. There is a question here: is it permissible for a person from the congregation to be the interim minister? I don't think at this point in existence that we can say a hard yes or no to anything. If there is something that you think needs to be explored, then you really need to let your transition team know, or the interim search. There's also an interim search team. You need to let them know your thoughts so that they can let you know where they are. Does that make sense? There was pre-pandemic, I would say to you, yeah, you really shouldn't do the internal stuff. You really shouldn't. I mean, I had more clarity about what was right and wrong pre-pandemic than I do at this point. At this point, I think there are questions, and when there are questions, we need to explore those. Next question: how will we know when we're ready to move from determining our church's identity to actively searching for an interim pastor? Well, so you can go ahead and begin the search for an interim pastor. You need to have your interim in place so that your church can function as a congregation without requiring extra work from without requiring extra work that's not the clarifying identity work, okay? Without, the day-to-day work, so that you can have the day-to-day work continue in the life of your church. Um, the but the clarifying the congregation's identity really will be process that will get you ready for beginning the search for your installed pastor.
Beth, I know that the interim team is still trying to, really pin down all the qualities that they're looking for an interim, like that bridge pastor that you were talking about in your slide. So can you help us? That second point was kind of new to me, which I was excited about, of like working with you a little bit and finding a way to connect things. What do you feel like that might look like? And what are the most helpful things that we could be looking for in someone with that? Because I think that would help us even more pinpoint how that bridge pastor isn't doing intentional interim work, but is helping us still through this process and supporting us through that process.
Right. So, well, the first thing I would say to that is I really want to have that open relationship with whomever you call, but also with you. I want you to feel that you can reach out to me. I'm not always easy to get a hold of. That is fine. Leave me a message. I will get to you. But I want you to reach out to me. If someone else can answer your questions better than I can, or as easily as I can, then I may refer you somewhere. But for your bridge pastor, someone, I would expect that you're looking for someone who can help with preaching responsibilities, pastoral care of the congregation, and I think a part of that pastoral care for the congregation during a time of transition is being connected to the transition team. Not that they need to attend the transition team meetings, but they just need to be open to hearing. That needs to be a two-way street, I guess is what I'm saying. That should be open communication. And I'm a part of that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Other questions?
Yes, Beth, if I could rephrase the question I put in the chat
Okay.
about how will we know? So if the interim pastor is going to already be here while we're still working on clarifying our identity, at what point will we know we're ready to do the big search for the permanent or semi-permanent pastor?
Right.
Is
Well,
it- I don't know. Is there a point? It's probably not a hard.
so I don't, I do. I'm one of the people who thinks we never stop developing. So our identity is always becoming more and more clear for us as we grow, as we show. That's as an individual. Now, put that, attach that to the image of a congregation. I think that's true as well. But there will be a point where you're pretty clear about, it. Maybe I should say it this way. You already know who you are. You may not know how to articulate it, or you may not be certain that you're all on the same page even. And there may be some work that you need to do to clarify that. What we will do, what the transition team will do, is work with the congregation to clearly articulate. And then the congregation will also give input to any written statement that is made. So my hope is that we can move through clarifying identity and have not just a purpose statement or an identity statement, but that have some words or phrases that you all know and agree with. Does that make sense?
So we already have a mission statement. Is that what we were talking about?
So no, I'm talking about identity. But so
Okay.
your identity and your mission statement definitely will go hand in hand. And the transition team will be looking at your mission statement as well. Not necessarily to change it, but to just say, is this who we are? Does this fit? other questions? Comments? Yesterday, the transition team met, and there were a few people from council who were there as well, and talked about process and kind of what to expect. Today, we will meet again and actually begin doing some of that planning work. And from our meeting today, we'll also determine what is our meeting schedule going to look like, and when will we meet again? We do have tentatively, if we need to add tomorrow evening, we may try to do that, but I'm afraid we won't have everybody on the transition team if that's the case. But we will as soon as we have a rhythm to the meeting for the transition team, then we will let the congregation know that as well. Thank you.
Beth. Thanks, Beth. And I want to say a special thank you to the transition team again for gathering, and Beth for figuring out where we go and how we gather and how we make things happen. And thank you to all of you who are here today, who stayed a little longer to listen to this information session. I, for one, feel greatly encouraged about this structure, and I'm a planner, so I appreciate the structure that you offered, Beth, and just that kind of understanding of each step of the process feels much more clear to me, which is really exciting.
So there is also a question in the chat. Does Joseph have a list of interims?
Yep, Kathleen, that is yes, he does have a list of folks that we've used for pulpit supply. And I think he is looking for a larger list too. So if any of you all have ideas about folks who might serve as an interim basis as like a bridge pastor, so doing those preaching duties and some worship planning and some administrative, but not a full on, full-time interim, that would be wonderful to hear from you all today too.
Yeah, this is Joseph chiming in. He does have that list. Along with Joan, I'm co-chairing it with Joan. So Joan and I are sharing that responsibility of the interim search team. So we're halving that. So we have gathered that information. And thank you. And we're very open to any other information we need to have at our fingertips. And the transition team will meet. We'll be meeting. I'm sorry, the interim team will meet Wednesday via Zoom at 7 p.m.
Great. Joseph, I didn't know you were here, so thank you for chiming in.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Good.
And the transition team will meet today at 4.
I should add that Joan is here as well.
Good to know.
And our dog.
Yeah, I will. Please send me pictures of any animals that were present today so I can add them to the attendance list. Just want to see them all.
And I just have to say, I really appreciated the snow pictures in your opening this morning. That was really beautiful. We're just feeling cold and not seeing any snow. I really appreciated seeing the snow. And I know I'm not as cold as you are. I do know that. Well, thank you all. I look forward to doing this work with your church, and I'm excited about what the future holds.
Amen.
Okay. Well, peace and blessings, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sharon.
Thank you, Beth.